Good afternoon. My name is Andy Brown. I'm from the Access Group, and I'm joined this afternoon by Michelle Ferguson from the Royal British Legion Industries. So Michelle is the Director of Manufacturing for Scotland, and she's kindly agreed to join us today and give us an insight into their organisation and how they've been, adopting and changing the business practices over the last, over the last few months, and potentially how they're looking at, with the recovery and so on, with the changing landscape we've got. So, Michelle, I was intrigued by this conversation because obviously you're aligned to a charity, but obviously you are manufacturing as well. So, could you give us a bit of an insight into your working practices and so on?
Yeah. Scotland's Bravest manufacturing is how we trade in Scotland, and that would make you wonder what we do. So we employ veterans and others with disabilities, people who are possibly long-term unemployed, who've served the country, possibly become disabled through that service. One of our first employees was a triple amputee.
Wow.
And you may wonder what he could do within manufacturing as a triple amputee. Can I tell you, he was absolutely outstanding.
Right.
Set the pace of the factory, and worked one of our biggest machines, which is a water jet cutter. Not only did he work it, he programmed it, and he did the service within it as well. So what we're doing here is making people realise and believe in their potential.
Brilliant.
Through manufacturing.
Yeah. That's it's obviously very different than the normal sort of manufacturing cultures and sort of organisations that we deal with. So it is really intriguing. And how have you found? I guess have you had to change business processes or manufacturing processes to accommodate the recent challenges we've had?
Yeah, we very early on made the decision in Scotland to close the factory.
Okay.
Now, we didn't close the factory thinking that's us closed until we come out of COVID.
Mm-hmm.
We closed the factory so that we could put the right things in place to make it a great manufacturing facility. So we kept on a very small, nimble team, and we worked with real urgency so that we put measures in place so that our facilities were remodelled, putting our team safety first. Now that meant everything from putting in new wash hand basins on the factory floor, putting in one-way systems, coming up with a COVID-19 action plan, safety standards, new standards of operations. And to do that, I reached out to an organisation which was global, who had manufacturing facilities in Europe, in Italy, and in China, where it all started off, or where we believe it started off. They were fantastic and gave us lots of advice about what they'd implemented within their organisation. So it put us in a real good place going forward. And we were able to implement that and then take that a stage further. Because what we wanted to do was bring everybody back. And that meant changing our whole area of manufacturing. So we moved quite major equipment. Placed it, invested in new work areas, basic things like putting in bigger workbenches so that people could work together, but physically distanced at the same time. It was a massive investment because moving machinery, which is not an easy thing to do.
Yeah. So you've managed to maintain that sort of cultural integrity that sounds like you've built up there and keep people safe as well.
Yeah, that was really important because it's not just your safety from COVID-19, but it's your mental health safety. We work with a group of people that might not just have physical issues, they may be working with, higher levels of anxiety, and COVID-19 really brought that into fruition, and people could see it and feel it, and the concerns about being at home were very difficult, and what would the new norm look like? What would the new future look like?
Yeah.
So what we wanted to do was the new norm to feel the same as the old norm, but look different.
Okay. Yeah.
So bring people back, make them feel safe, make the environment feel good, but different, so that it was very obvious that physical distancing was important, but it was easy to do.
It certainly sounds like you've handled that particularly well, and probably got some advice for other organisations as well. Do you think these processes and the way you've implemented it now are here to stay for the long term, or do you think you'll go back ultimately to old ways of working, or is this the new norm forever now?
I think it will be mainly the new norm. I really do hope that we get to the stage that we don't have to wear masks as we walk around the building. Mm-hmm. But I think, sort of having that area of space while still doing good manufacturing, so we're still as lean as possible. So mm-hmm. the new workout, we looked at lean manufacturing within the facility, but also giving people that space mm-hmm. to mm-hmm. be safe, and that's not a bad thing.
No, sure. Have some of the practices sort of taking some of the lean practices that we talk about? Have you been able to implement new, more improved practices?
Yeah, we've done quite a bit of that. We actually worked with you guys to make improvements on it. So, which also not only is improved for us for lean manufacturing, but for the businesses that we work with, so we can offer them a better service. We've got there were things that we didn't use on. We used Factory Master, and there was bolt-ons that we didn't have, which we've now got, which improve our service for our clients. And that's what everything's about. It's about putting people first. Firstly, our people, and then our other people are our clients that we work with. So we're, I say we're profit for purpose. So mm-hmm. we're looking to make a profit. So we're a sustainable organisation, but it's all about the purpose, and the purpose is our people.
Mm-hmm. And of course, your sister company we talked about before is the Royal British Legion. Do you, how? I'm intrigued to understand how you feel that the charity industry, I suppose, or sector has been impacted by what's gone on.
We were very much went into crisis mode. It's being part of a military organisation made that so good. So within days of the announcement of lockdown, we had a group of people, our senior management team and others got together, and we put in place a daily formula, plan for meeting with staff, sort of what we were communicating, very much new processes. And I think that was where that military, sort of getting ready to go into action was fantastic. So from a charity perspective, where a lot of other charities stood back, and took time to consider what they should be doing, we were very much, right, what can we do now to make sure that our BLI is in a good place at the end of this, and that we can still help people, whether that be remotely, whether that's bringing them back into manufacturing, whether that's communicating to people who might want to raise funds from us because people weren't travelling to work, would they like to do sit-ups? So we became really, from not being the best well-known manufacturing or charity in the UK to quite a high level of engagement, and I think people like to know that they were doing something special with an organisation that was continuing to do good work out there.
Certainly things sound very positive from your perspective. Are you seeing a return, in terms of funding and normality coming back to the sector for yourselves, or are there still headwinds ahead, would you say?
Nothing is ever going to be easy when you're in manufacturing or within the charity sector, and you put them both together, it can be very challenging. However, I think because we put good, strong decisions in place very early on, we're in a positive place. From a manufacturing, we've increased our manufacturing by about 90%. So our business has grown during COVID. We did slightly pivot. We looked at what we were doing, which was mainly infrastructure signage. So, sort of that was the core of our business. Plus, we did, specialist cutting for global companies, sort of offshore companies, engineering companies, and such like. That kind of constricted. So that part of the business. Infrastructure slowed down because, sort of in Scotland there was a decision that if it didn't have to be done, it wouldn't be done. So we looked at what would be needed, and when other organisations were saying stop with investment, we put a good business case together, and we actually invested in quite high level machinery. So we invested in, a state-of-the-art printer and specialists in cutters. So we worked with Mamaki, said if we were going to enter the commercial signage market, as in COVID-19 market, that we would need a printer on site very quickly. We managed to get a printer on site within 10 days and being trained, during that time.
So you pivoted extremely quickly in that regard, yeah.
Very quickly, and then got the specialist cutting tools so that we could actually cut the circles for the ground and get out there. So we did that within a month. We had both pieces of equipment, and we won contracts with companies with the NHS, with the Scottish Prison Service. We went out and looked for the business, and because we'd implemented a lot here, we could advise them on what they should be doing from health and safety as well, and how to communicate well. Learning from our mistakes, we weren't perfect. We did make mistakes, so we could share that guidance with them.
Yeah, that's amazing, and it's interesting, isn't it, how quickly you've sort of changed direction and found new business. Going forward, you're going to look for new opportunities in different sectors as well. Have you learned lessons from that in terms of, well, we can do different things and we can go into different sectors and we can exploit new markets? Has that been something that's opened your eyes?
Yeah, definitely. We've been far more dynamic than we possibly were. I think we'll only be celebrating our third year in business next year. We're only 2 years old. Right. And we thought we were doing incredibly well because we could do infrastructure signage, so a motorway sign for the M8 or for Network Rail, we could do rail signs, or biggest contracts, Bear Scotland, and we do local authorities. So we thought we were doing great. Yeah. And then all of a sudden thinking, right, well, that's good, but what else can we do? And being able to do it fast and being successful and doing good quality work while sharing that organisations are giving something back. So they're getting a really amazing product, on-time delivery, bespoke to their needs, and they're able to help people who otherwise would potentially be long-term unemployed, facing real anxiety, struggling with PTSD, and by giving their business to us, that, yes, they're doing something good. So I think looking out to new markets has been a real eye-opener. So instead of just doing the COVID signage for things like hospitals, we're now doing our first exterior sign for a hospital whose sign was, sort of dilapidated. So we were able to say to them, and while we're here, we can replace that exterior sign for you. That would be our first. So it's brought new areas of growth and stopped us maybe concentrating too much in our core business.
So I was just thinking there, just going back to some of the manufacturing processes that you mentioned earlier on, and you've pivoted and you've got new machinery, you train people up pretty quickly as well. Have you seen, in terms of sort of productivity, has productivity improved for you? Has it declined, or has it more broadly stayed the same? How have you managed to improve some of those processes?
Productivity has increased. And I think that's by, again, it's the new machinery. So if you invest in machinery and you have the capabilities and the background knowledge, with Factory Master and it all linking through, you can automate. And automation and digitalisation is what, as an organisation, we have to do. And every business is having to do it, whether it's communication, us doing this, or speaking. I was speaking at an event in Europe a few weeks ago. We're doing it all through broadband, so making sure that you have all that good stuff in place and that it's all seamless is a priority. We were talking earlier about us upgrading our systems and upgrading access to the latest version. All of these things are vital, and and it all links all the way through to the factory floor. So yeah, we've increased productivity, but it has not just been machinery, it's been people, it's been processes, it's been having better layouts because you've got more space so you can review things quicker. So, but we have the best team in the UK.
It's fantastic to hear. It's interesting because we've had conversations with various organisations over the last 6 months, as you'd imagine, and there's different opinions. Some people's views are we'll stand still, we'll see what happens. Other people have taken a more proactive approach, like yourselves, where they've invested in machinery or they've invested in the people, or they've brought projects forward and they've used what might have been a quieter time to get systems and processes improved, so that when we come out of this, they're better placed to take advantage of opportunities, or indeed, like you've done, is they've pivoted and started going off in a different direction, perhaps, you know, making manufacturing face masks or manufacturing, you know, ventilators or what have you. But the ones that seem to be doing well are the ones that are investing and if you like, you know, planning for the future and bringing those projects forward. Sounds like you've been doing exactly the same. Have you got any sort of general advice for organisations out there like yourselves?
I think the important thing is knowing what people need before they actually know they need it. Or from a business perspective, that's what we've tried to do, is to stay on top and look forward rather than just concentrating on the now. It's saying, what is next? You know, messaging and communication is going to be vital. Signage is going to be the, you know, and it's visual signage, not just digital signage, which we were all moving on to. Everyone, you know, was communicating in a more digital way.
Yeah, certainly. Like calls like this, we probably wouldn't have been doing 6 months ago, would we? We'd be face to face.
Exactly, it would have been face to face.
Yeah.
But print signage is even more vital because not everyone can see in a phone or read in a phone. If you've got reading glasses, you know, and you've got a message coming through on your phone saying, you know, sort of walk to the left, you don't need your glasses, you don't see it, you don't hear your phone. Whereas if you've got a sign on the ground saying keep left, you know, that's what matters. So it's thinking about what the needs of the environment are going to be that we live in, you know, whether that be signage or what happens at end of life of signs. That's really important to us because environmental impacts are important.
Sort of recycling and so on, is it?
Yeah. One of the things that we really looked at when we were buying the machinery was what damage would it do to the environment, because we've got a responsibility for that. So we bought, you know, sort of a machine that used less ink, that the ink lies on the top rather than soaking the way through. So again, less damage to the environment. We try to keep people away from using gloss materials, you know, everything's matte. Longer life if possible, so rather than buying something that you have to replace in a week's time, saying if you invest a little bit more, this is what you get. But we also look at, you know, sort of end of life for motorway signs, for road signs. At the moment, those all go to landfill. So we're working with Strathclyde University on a remanufacturing project for that. So these things can all continue during COVID.
So are these new initiatives or things you're doing anyway, or has it actually just made them more, you know, brought them more into the sort of forefront of people's thinking during this period?
We have always, as an organisation, put environmental as, you know, sort of a priority. Now, one of the reasons that you know, we have that as a management, you know, we feel that's the management, but if you go after public contracts, they actually state that as a requirement as well.
Okay, yeah.
Which is fantastic. So everybody, if you're looking for new business and want to go into that sort of public arena, you should be saying, and what are we doing and how can we improve what we're doing? So we have that. And in actual fact, during COVID, we've got developed an environmental committee, and that's across RBLI. Because obviously, as RBLI, we don't just have 2 3 manufacturing facilities in the UK. We've also got nursing homes. We've got, you know, sort of hospital accommodation. We've got single living accommodation, disabled accommodation. We've got, you know, sort of homeless, you know, sort of emergency accommodations for homeless. So it's what environmental impact are we making across the organisation, and how can we improve that?
Yeah.
And that's fantastic because it's not isolating it. It's our people.
Yeah. So you've always got one eye on that by the sounds of it, but it's certainly something that I think has become more into the forefront of people's thinking during this period. People are becoming more, you know, environmentally aware of the impacts of manufacturing on, you know.
Yeah, definitely. And I think one of the biggest journeys in this is, and understandings and learnings, is speak and build relationships. Communicate, you know, or the support we received from you. We were having an issue, it was a problem, and it was resolved the next day, you know, and that just took that pressure off. And across the majority of the organisations that we work with, that everybody has pulled together, and instead of endless emails, people are more likely to pick up the phone, which is just fantastic. So I think manufacturing, like a lot of different organisations and companies and structures have moved into more of a verbal communication than written communication, and it's fast decision making. It's enabled us to recover revenue, rebuild operations, and accelerate adoption of new digital solutions, which we're all about, and it's been fantastic. So yeah, I think that's really made a difference.
Excellent. Well, I think we'll draw it to a close now, Michelle, but that has been fantastic. Thank you very much for your time.